Every major empire reached this point, a moment when the bills came due, when the wars had been fought, the promises had been made, and the people expected stability. And in that moment, the people in charge faced a choice. They could raise taxes and risk revolt. They could default on obligations and lose legitimacy. Or they could do something else, something that felt like genius at the time. They could create more money. It always felt necessary. It always felt temporary. And it always changed everything. This is not a story about foolish leaders or moral decay. This is about a pattern that repeats across centuries, a pattern so consistent that historians can spot it long before the consequences arrive. History shows what happens next, and America is now at that stage. Let's start with why this happens at all. Because printing money or its ancient equivalent is never the first choice. It is the last rational option when all others have failed. Imagine you are leading a great power. You have just fought an expensive war. Your infrastructure is crumbling. Veterans demand pensions. Citizens demand services. Foreign creditors demand payment. You cannot raise taxes. The population is exhausted. The wealthy are well protected. The middle class is already squeezed. You cannot cut spending. Every program has a constituency. Every obligation was promised in exchange for loyalty or peace. You cannot borrow more, or borrowing has become so expensive that it threatens the entire system. So you do what seems elegant, you create new money, you pay your soldiers, you fund your programs, you meet your obligations, and for a while it works. The economy doesn't immediately collapse, people accept the currency, life continues. The problem is invisible at first. And that's what makes it so seductive. Because in the short term, creating money solves the crisis. It buys time, it prevents riots, it maintains order. The consequences come later, and they come for someone else's administration, someone else's generation. This is why every empire does it. Not because they're stupid, because they're trapped. Now let's talk about what happens next. The pattern is so consistent across history that it almost feels scripted. Start with Rome in the 3rd century. The empire is massive. Borders are under constant attack, and the military needs funding. The emperors begin debasing the currency. They take silver coins and melt them down, mixing in cheaper metals. Suddenly 1 coin becomes 2, 2 becomes 4. For a while it works. Soldiers are paid, borders are defended, the empire continues. But merchants are not stupid. They notice the coins are lighter. They notice the silver content is dropping, so they raise prices. The government responds by creating more coins. Prices rise further. Wages can't keep up. By the end of the century, the denarius, the coin that once represented Roman stability, has lost over 90% of its value. Savings evaporate. Trade networks break down. People retreat into barter. The tax system collapses because money becomes meaningless. The empire survives for another 2 centuries, but it's never the same. The currency never recovers. And the loss of monetary trust becomes one of the invisible wounds that weakens Rome from within. Now skip forward to Germany, 1921. The Weimar Republic inherits catastrophic war debts. The Treaty of Versailles demands reparations the country cannot afford. The government faces a choice that sounds familiar. They print marks, not slowly but massively. At first it stimulates employment. Factories reopen, people go back to work. Politicians congratulate themselves. Then prices begin to move, not gradually, but exponentially. A loaf of bread that cost 1 mark in 1921 costs 100 billion marks by 1923. Workers are paid twice a day because money loses value by the hour. Savings accounts that once represented security become worthless. The middle class is wiped out overnight. The psychological damage is profound. An entire generation learns that money, work, and promises mean nothing. We know what happens next. Economic chaos creates desperation. Desperation creates demand for radical solutions. Radical solutions reshape the world. This is the pattern. It starts with rational leaders facing impossible choices. It continues with temporary stability. It ends with a loss of trust so deep that it changes the society permanently. And here's what matters. It always unfolds slowly until suddenly it does not. So let's talk about America. The United States is not Weimar Germany. It is not 3rd century Rome. The dollar is still the global reserve currency. The United States economy remains the largest in the world. Treasury bonds are still considered the safest asset on earth. But the mechanics are no longer theoretical. Since 2008, the United States has added trillions to its money supply. First to stop a financial collapse, then to fight a pandemic, then to fund ongoing deficits that no political party seriously intends to close. The national debt now exceeds $35 trillion. Annual interest payments are approaching $1 trillion, more than the defense budget. And the response consistently has been the same: create more money, keep the system moving, buy more time. So far, it has worked. Inflation appeared, then moderated, the economy did not collapse, the dollar remained strong. But this is exactly how the pattern begins. What protects America right now is trust. Global trust that the dollar will hold value, that United States institutions are stable, that treasury bonds will be repaid. This trust is America's greatest asset. It allows the United States to borrow at rates other countries can only dream of. It allows the Federal Reserve to create money without immediate inflation. It gives American leaders room that no other nation has. But trust is not infinite. History is very clear on this point. Monetary trust is not a switch that flips from on to off. It is a slow erosion, a gradual shift in perception. And by the time leaders realize it is happening, the options to reverse it are gone. This does not mean collapse is imminent, but it does mean America's now at the stage where historical empires enter dangerous territory, the stage where the easy solutions have all been used, where the debt is structural, not temporary, where the only way to manage obligations is to create more money, which slowly undermines the foundation of the system itself. The margin for error is shrinking. Another financial crisis, another pandemic, another war, and the options narrow further. And the most dangerous part, the people managing this do not feel reckless. They feel responsible. They are preventing disaster, protecting jobs, maintaining stability, just like every generation before them. So what happens next? History does not repeat itself exactly. The details change, the timeline shifts, the mechanisms evolve, but the pattern is always the same. Trust erodes slowly, then quickly. Stability feels permanent until it is not. Rome did not collapse the day the currency was debased. Germany did not fall into chaos the first time the printing presses ran. These things take time, but they consistently punish the same mistakes. And the mistake is always the same: believing that this time is different, that the rules do not apply, that the consequences can be delayed forever. America stands at the point every empire reaches, the point where all the easy choices have been made. What comes next is not written, but the warning signs are older than nations themselves.